Hello and welcome back to the DFS Premier League show brought to you by VIP-bet.com. I'm your host Kevin DeVries. Joining me as always in that window right over there is my good friend and partner in crime, Rob Langevin. Rob, this last week, match week 23, was supposed to be really high scoring, and then instead what it did was suck a whole lot.
Yeah.
Just none of the teams we thought would do super well did well. A lot of the teams we didn't think would do well did. We saw Watford overturn Arsenal. We saw Sunderland draw with Tottenham. Meanwhile, Burnley and Palace and Swansea all picked up points. It was a very strange weekend indeed. How do you keep people kind of motivated after a week that was as bad as this one was?
It was tough across all formats of fantasy. With 13 goals scored on the Saturday DFS slate, it's not an encouraging sign. But there are goals to come. I think it was just one of those weeks where guys who weren't owned or insignificantly fantasy assets just came as they are. How often do you get James Morrison, Alvaro Negredo, and add anybody else? It's just
it was loads of center backs. I mentioned to you off air. I had a team that had Scott Dan and Michael Keane in it, who both get goals. But my three forwards, which was Kane, Giroud, and Costa, none.
Not so much. Yeah, it's one of the caveats of playing soccer. It's not basketball where both teams are going to be in around 100 points and there's assists and rebounds plenty for everybody to go around. Like I said, with the 13 goals on the slate, Chelsea, Liverpool only getting one apiece and other teams just not coming to play, it makes for a down week. And with the point total that it was, 128.25 was the winning total from Saturday's slate. It makes you look forward that it's a fast turnaround week, that there are games on Saturday and Sunday again. And, you could just get back on the pony and reinvest some of that money.
Yeah. Well, hopefully things do get better. I'm pretty sure I was 50-some off in my prediction of what I thought the total score was going to be. And in this format especially, you're probably even more frustrated because you have more skin in the game because you're actually paying to play. So even in the other formats, it was a bad week, but at least the money wasn't on the line, and that was the case here. So hopefully it wasn't too bad for you. Hopefully you didn't invest too heavily. And if you did, hopefully you managed to get somewhere over 100, because I certainly did not. All right, well, we have another big set of fixtures again this week. Just seems like we're rolling them one after another. I long for those days back when it was 4 or 5 matches. It was so easy. It was so nice to prep for those. But instead, we have another 7 matches here on this slate, so I'll dive right into it first with Crystal Palace versus Sunderland. For the player that I like in this one, I like Wilfried Zaha. He came back. He's at 7,300. He already looked good. He was often involved. Palace have implemented the ever on vogue back 3 at the moment, and he was largely playing off Benteke, which should be very dangerous against Sunderland, who allow the most shots on goal and the most crosses in the Premier League. I don't think they'll be able to set up shop, Sunderland, the way they did against Tottenham, because they have to pick up points against a team like Palace, who are in and around that relegation battle there with them. I also like Benteke. I mentioned the crosses. I think that makes Benteke a very interesting option because I think you're going to need to start chucking those in. And the fact that you have Zaha back, Townsend on the other side, who neither of us like, but his crossing numbers are still up. And then you add Van Aanholt into the mix. All of a sudden, you start to have a little something going on there with all those crosses. Also, speaking of that defense, I just realized I haven't highlighted any of these people thus far. Also, in the defense, Scott Dan at 3,400 is very interesting. He did score last week. He's obviously a big target there. But I want to talk about way down here in price, Mamadou Sakho at 2,500. Walks into this club as the best defender there. You consider that they already have Van Aanholt that they just brought in. Not amazing defensively, but is helpful in that when he's attacking, he's at least pushing that flank back. And then you have the possibility of Mandanda coming back in the next couple of weeks. So all of a sudden, this Crystal Palace defense that has been much maligned over the last season and a half, all of a sudden, you start to have some pieces there. Sunderland, not great. Their last shot on target against Tottenham midweek was in the 39th minute. Yeah. Didn't even have a shot in the second half. So, would I be surprised if Defoe scored? No. But, I'm just saying, maybe a little something in there. And for 2,500 and 3,400 with those two, the value could definitely be in there somewhere. For somebody I dislike, every Sunderland player except for Defoe. Sunderland could score. Palace's defense still not great if Mandanda isn't back in time, if they don't start Sacco, which could happen because Delaney did get an assist. So if we're basing it on that metric, he could hold onto a spot. But I looked this up and I thought it was astounding. Defoe has been involved in 14 of Sunderland's 20 goals.
Wow.
60-some% is what that ends up being. So if Crystal Palace do concede a goal, it'll probably be to Defoe. And if Sunderland score, it'll probably be Defoe. So don't mind Defoe, but basically every other Sunderland player I'm off. Their defense is all suspended and hurt. They brought in Julian Lescott. Fortunately, he didn't start for them at the weekend. I think that's how they held on to that clean sheet. John O'Shea, just not that good. I don't know how Billy Jones is a footballer, so I'm avoiding most of those Sunderland guys. I do think there could be some goals in this. I'm going to say Crystal Palace 3-2.
That's a good tout. I think Palace does get the nod here. I think it'll probably be maybe 2-1. You didn't mention Christian Benteke. I think Christian Benteke is a direct beneficiary of Wilfred Zaha coming back and spreading the space down the wing. Zaha is a phenomenal fantasy asset in any format. He's very good in DFS. Look what he did last week. I believe he got 11 points and really didn't do anything, significant. But he managed to accumulate enough points to make him relevant for his price point, which I think was 7,000 last week. So at 7,300, he's a viable investment this week.
Yeah, I'd agree. I did name drop Benteke, though, man. Come on.
My bad.
All right, so now we're going to come to you talking about the other big Belgian striker, I would imagine, versus a Bournemouth defense that has been woeful of late.
Yeah, I was going to talk about Lukaku, and, I don't see it. I think you're going to pick one with the strikers on the slate. There's not really anything sexy that jumps out to you because Liverpool, all their players are mostly involved in the midfield, and you kind of get a question mark of who to pick. You don't know who to pick. You have Kane on the slate, and I think his ownership is probably going to reflect him being the biggest name on the plate. But for likes in this game, it starts in defense for me for Everton. I think this guy is probably one of the best defenders, if not the best currently right now, and that's Seamus Coleman. Got an assist in the game that was played just on Wednesday. In his last 3 games, 24, 14, and 10. He's basically knocked on. Everton is playing Bournemouth. Bournemouth do like to ship goals, and Everton likes to attack out of the back. Those are 2 good things for Seamus Coleman at 5,600. This game to me has a lot of sneaky mid-range value. If you look at like the midfielders and some of the guys that you may roster as your secondary guy to maybe like an Ali or an Eriksson, look at Morales at 6,500, Davies at 3,700, and even a little small tout for Ryan Fraser at 5,000. Those are guys to keep an eye on. Just check your lineup before the games kick off. It is
nuts that Davis is still that cheap.
Yeah. I guess that's what happened when you're 19, Guys I don't like on this slate. I'm going to go anywhere near the Bournemouth defense this week. Charlie Daniels at 4,600, Adam Smith at 4,300. They can be contributors, but I just don't see it. The thing that knocks them for me, Bournemouth has given up 8 goals in their last 3 games. I'd rather go with a more cheaper option. You mentioned Patrick Van Aanholt for Crystal Palace. I think that's an awesome get this week if you want to spend a little. Nathaniel Klein for Liverpool with the fixture at Hull could be a decent get. And then even on the cheaper side, I think a Harry Maguire deserves a nod here. What we just saw from the United game, ever pushing forward and being very involved in the attack from the back. So I'd rather either go higher or lower than what Bournemouth's defense is going to offer. I think Everton, despite what we saw this week midweek against Stoke, is probably going to win this game at home. I think the Toffees take it 2-0. I think they keep it clean.
Yeah, entirely possible. They were 4 out of 5 clean sheets coming into this week. Weren't able to keep it this week against Stoke. But it was pretty cool seeing Crouch celebrate. It was bad for me in literally every fantasy league that I'm in. But I have a soft spot for Crouchy, got us into the Champions League. Also got us out of the Champions League with that foul against Real Madrid. But him doing the robot, I thought was just a really fun.
Yep.
Yeah, it was just a really fun moment in football in general. And sometimes things like that override, your fantasy stuff.
Absolutely.
Because we all like the sport to begin with, obviously.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think Everton do well in this one. 2-0 sounds about right to me. There's a chance that Bournemouth get a cheap one. But this shift also to the back 3, by the way, which is why Coleman has blossomed so quickly. It obviously benefits him. He's getting forward load. So it was technically counted as a goal briefly today, and then was changed to an assist on an own goal. But anyway, sorry, my nose is running a whole lot. I don't know why. My nose is crying for how awful this week was. Yeah, I'll say 2-0, but I wouldn't be surprised by like a 2-1 or something like that. All right, I will lead into Hull versus Liverpool. The person I like in this one is Sadio Mane on 8,500. Liverpool have not lost a match that Mane has started and finished. The only time he started and they didn't win is when they were up 3-1 on Bournemouth, took him off and lost 4-3, which is pretty crazy. His pace opens up this entire attack, and with him being back in the fold, I think Liverpool should start to look a lot better. Hull, which you mentioned, did look very good defensively in this one. They didn't look bad midweek against United either in their EFL Cup match. I guess it was last midweek. So they are looking good, but I think Liverpool still technically the best attack in the league as far as the statistics go. I think they'll probably be able to show up. I think they're going to be frustrated by what happened in the past couple of weeks, and so maybe they'll look to turn that around. I mean, a 1-1 draw with Chelsea is not the worst thing that's happened, but it's been so long since we've seen them kind of free-flowing, and I think a large part of that has been the absence of Sadio Mane. For my dislike, it's Gini Wijnaldum on 5,300. He does have 2 in the last 5 now, which I think is why we're starting to see his name be kicked around a bit. But he now officially has the highest goal tally in the Premier League's history, with all of those goals coming in home fixtures. It's now 14. The next closest person is on 12. Exclusively at home. Is this match at home?
Nope.
No. Sure not. It's at Hull. So all of a sudden, he doesn't matter at all. I do not like most of the Hull options, but Maguire's not a horrible shout. I like the idea of Ranocchia if he does end up holding that spot. But the problem is they brought in so many new faces on deadline day, again, because this was a problem in the summer as well, where they just brought in loads of people. So it took us like a month before we even know who the starting 11 is. And I think we're going to see that again now. Even if I knew who the starting 11 was, I probably wouldn't recommend most of them this week. But considering we don't really know, I think it's just an even bigger knock against them. Although, all credit to Jakupovic, who was huge this week against Manchester United. He's on 3,700 against Liverpool, which is understandable. But, I mean, you hold Manchester United like that, and all of a sudden, you start getting thoughts, especially considering the goalkeeper has basically been a punt for the last month or so of just pick a random person and see what happens, because a lot of the high-price guys have been disappointing. Heaton, really the only cheapish one that continues to put out performance after performance. I think it was only 5,000 this week, and that was definitely a good call when they're at home. I do think Liverpool win this one. Still don't trust the Liverpool defense, though. Maybe Abel Hernandez does a little something. Markovic could have scored the winner today against United. I'll go Liverpool 3-1.
Yeah, that's about right. I think Hull's run of playing stout defense is going to come to an end here. I think Liverpool definitely get on the sheet here. I just don't know how many they put in. I think if Hull gives up 1, I think they try to sit on it. I could see this game being 2-0, somewhere in that play. There's going to be goals there. The only problem with Liverpool is, all their midfielders. I know you just touted Sadio Mane, but I don't know who to roster there, and I think they all steal from each other. I think Coutinho, Mane, and Firmino, they all steal from each other. Firmino basically missed a sitter in the Chelsea game. He could have had a winner. I think they're all going to steal from each other. Ownership wise, I'm completely steering clear of all 3 of them. I think I'd rather have a Spurs midfielder than anybody over in the Liverpool corner.
Interesting. Fair enough. All right, now we're going to come to you talking about Southampton versus West Ham.
For me, it starts with one guy, and it's the West Ham Swiss Army knife. I say it all the time because he's consistency in motion. It's Mikel Antonio at 7,200.
Should have scored today, by the way. Bobbled the ball badly.
Yeah, he did. He had the opportunity. It wouldn't have mattered. City was the better today, but
true.
Anyway. 7,200 for Mikel Antonio. The thing I want to see is we did see a glimpse of Snodgrass in the game for West Ham. It'd be interesting to see if he starts this game from the beginning and where it pushes Antonio. Antonio hasn't had less than 7 points in a game in his last 10 fixtures. Yeah. So you're getting about equal dollar value for point return there. But we want goals and we want assists. Antonio is basically probably one of their best goal scoring options there now with the departure of Payet. Andy Carroll sometimes struggling, sometimes being very useful. So Mikel Antonio for me is the like. Also, keep an eye on the lineups before they come out. I know James Ward-Prowse came up with a little injury, but at 5,800, I think that he could probably do something for you this week if he's in the starting lineup, because he does take a lot of set pieces and takes control of situations, especially on the offensive end, and a lot of stuff goes through him. On the dislike, we've said his name probably 4 or 5 times on this podcast. It's probably mentioned the same breath as Andres Townsend, and that's Nathaniel Redmond. 5, 1, 9, and 7 in his last 4. At his price tag, you could just look for a neutral option at that same price. There's tons of guys there. Just pick one. I mean, there's tons of guys. Look at what Burnley's offering. They have what's his name? Robbie Brady's coming over, so his price tag is pretty similar. I think he probably may get a start against Watford. Some of the Stoke midfielder offerings are about the same price. So I would completely steer clear of anything that Nathaniel Redmond has. This game to me is probably going to be boring personified. I don't see there being anything significantly standing out. If either team gets 1 goal, I'd probably say it's a fantasy win for everybody, but you're not really investing 1,000 of your roster spots in this. If you're rostering one person from this game, I would probably say that's probably excessive. If you could roster a half a player, sure, I would probably do that too. So I'm going for a 1-1 tie here.
Yeah, I think 1-1 is absolutely spot on, which, by the way, we both called with West Brom Middlesbrough in this past week. It was always going to be 1-1, and then it was. It was possibly the most predictable result of the season. All right. So yeah, I completely agree with you. 1-1. You kind of stole some of my thunder there, man.
Right.
With Robbie Brady on 4,600. Absolutely love him. I think this is probably the best deal for fantasy that happened in the January transfer window. Brady was a great value last season. I think he had 3 goals, 4 assists, but was always very, very cheap. Burnley, with injuries and having to move some players around, they've been playing Defour on the left, which is super not his natural position. I think they need Brady to play immediately. And the 4-4-2 that they've been playing, I think, will definitely make Brady super effective here. 4,600, there you go. Just highlighted him a little bit. And he's a crossing and set piece machine, and he's gonna get to enjoy feeding Andre Gray, who is easily the best Premier League forward he's gotten to play with. He played with Abel Hernandez 2 years before he developed. He played with Diamersi and Bacani last season, who only played half their games. He's played with Cameron Jerome. The fact that he now gets to play with the pace and finishing of Andre Gray, this is going to be something that I think finally unlocks the potential of this Burnley attack. You were on Goodmunson for a little bit, but there just weren't that many opportunities for Burnley. When they did have those opportunities, they largely took them. Andre Gray has something like a 58% shot accuracy percentage, which is pretty good. It's just shy of that elite category. But now you have Robbie Brady in there to create. You have Defour back in his natural position. Maybe get him more playing time, get him back into the groove of things. Goodmunson is always crazy cheap. They like to play 2 up front. Vokes does get the goal this week. But they also have other options up there. It was Barnes there for a little bit, who is not the most amazing player, but feeding off of Gray, I thought worked well for them. So I think it's a very promising future for Burnley there in the attack. I think Brady and Gray specifically are just going to keep feeding into each other in a points loop kind of going forward. And you don't love this Watford defense much. Yeah, I really like both of those guys. Also, I know you said you weren't sure if he was going to adapt well to the Premier League, but I really don't mind Mbai Niang at 4,600. Burnley have a great defense at home, top 5, but they're also bottom 5 in defense away from home. So with his kind of pace, Loughton likes to get forward. Who's the defender on the other ward? Ward, I believe?
Stephen Ward. Ben
Yeah. Also likes getting forward as well. So there could be some chances for Niang to really abuse them with his pace. I love Michael Keane, but he tends to deal with bigger strikers a lot better than he does pacey ones. So that could be another thing that gets them in trouble a little bit. If there's anybody I don't trust, it's the whole Watford defense. Holebas is coming back, which does help their attacking potential, but I do not think it helps improve their defensive chances. And like I said already, I do think that Burnley are going to get on the score sheet here once, if not twice. I'm going to say Burnley 2-1.
Yeah, I think you're being a little glorious with the goals, but It could be 2-1. It could be 1.
1-0.
It could be 1-0. Steve, this is one of those games where you need to check the lineup before you invest anybody in this. Stephen DeFore did get subbed out because he did have a hamstring problem in the game this week, so that's something to keep an eye on. I think Brady probably slips right into his spot if DeFore can't play. Austin Barnes, I believe, got transferred out yesterday. So
Ashley Barnes did? Oh, dang.
So be careful of that. I don't think he's actually eligible anymore.
That'll be a problem.
Unless there's another Austin Barnes. But anyway, but yeah, it's a good shout. Stay away from Watford defense. Like, I completely agree with you. Andre Gray is still another value play this week at 5,600.
Oh, he put in the performance last week, by the way.
Yeah.
For people that were like, why did all these experts double down on Andre Gray and then it didn't happen? The performance did happen. He had 5 shots. He had the second most shots in the Premier League.
Yeah. He had
just
enough.
Didn't go in.
He contributed enough points. He just didn't have the result from putting the goal, the ball in the net. That's all.
Yeah. Where do you land on this one?
I think it'll be 1-1-1-0. I think Burnley and Tom Heaton is probably the bargain of the week for goals for goalkeepers.
Yeah, I'm just a little shy of that Burnley away defense. I love their defense on the whole, but man, bottom 5 is significantly bad. All right, leading into you talking about West Brom versus Stoke. Now, our Albion boys, who we've been loving on for a while, have not really been coming through lately. They had this nice stretch of matches. Everything was supposed to be great. Rondon hasn't showed up. Phillips hasn't showed up. They've been scoring goals. They just aren't from the guys that we need. What do you think about the Baggies coming into this one?
This game, we mentioned last week how the West Brom game had 1-1 written all over it. If there's another 1-1 game written all over it, it's this one, West Brom versus Stoke. This is one of those games you're not really investing more than probably one player, maybe a West Brom defender, maybe a Stoke player. The player I'm investing in this week is Peter Crouch at 5,000. 4 goals, 2 assists in his last 5, like you just mentioned. We saw the robot. I think we see something different from him this week. Maybe a robot moonwalk, something sassy. At his price point, you could basically pair him with, Benteke, Lukaku, or Kane, and still have enough money to have a stout investment through the sevens, through your midfield and utility. So that's something to keep an eye on. You mentioned Sam Vokes before. I'm only bringing him up because it's pretty significant that they're basically priced about the same, and Vokes did score last week. Vokes hasn't started a game, hasn't gone full 90 minutes since December 14th. It's a significant thing to look at. He does score, but he does always come on late, and he does have 2 games in the 20s during that time because he has had goals.
He's this year's Ojoa.
Basically, exactly what he is. And for people I don't like, I want to know which Marko Arnautovic is going to show up. Listen, the guy has all-world talent. We've been touting him for 2 or 3 years since me and Kevin have been doing podcasts together. We love him. Marko the Shark, we love him. But he goes from scoring 2 goals, looking like he's going to take off and do something significant, and then he goes 34 minutes, gets 2 yellow cards, and gets thrown out of the game. Then this past week, he does something good. Assisted on the Crouch goal, and it looked like he played a great game.
Yeah.
I want to know what Marko Arnautovic is going to show up at his price tag. Like I mentioned it before when I was talking about a midfielder in that price range in the 6,000s. There's other options there that you could probably switch laterally to or spend a little bit more to. Go get Wilfried Zaha, who's more of a dual player rather than Arnautovic, who's like a hope and pray guy. Like I said in the beginning, I think this game is 1-1. This isn't really a significant investment from a DFS standpoint, so you're probably grabbing one player and one player only, and that player would probably be Peter Crouch for me.
Interesting. I think I'm going to go 1-0. I don't know for who. I agree. 1-1 does seem written in the stars, but neither of these attacks have really been clicking the way I'd like. Although I did mention on Andre Gray that the performance was there. Matty Phillips' performance wasn't fully there, but he could have had a goal and an assist in this game. Just balls didn't bounce his way, and you assume that does kind of neutralize over time. All right, and I'm going to wrap things up with these matchups with Tottenham versus Middlesbrough. Seemingly, you are much more interested in them than I am. I'm kind of more in the he's not that into you mold, which means, and take a seat or hold on to something, because I'm about to use my like on a defender. What? I never do that, ever. No Danny Rose means that a lot of that attacking impetus is going to land at Kyle Walker's feet. Not that he necessarily needed the encouragement. I really like Kyle Walker. His pace is just so electric. The three at the back, which hopefully Tottenham revert to, because the back four just, it's pretty funny to say, it didn't work in a week where they kept a clean sheet. But the problem was that they weren't contributing to the attack at the degree that they had in past weeks, at least not effectively, because Sunderland just set up shop and dared Tottenham to beat them, which they didn't. But anyway, I love Walker this week. Going up against Boro, who continue to have the fewest chances created in the Premier League. Also, the fewest goals in the Premier League, which makes a whole lot of sense. I honestly would not be surprised if Kyle Walker ended up with both an assist and a clean sheet in this one, which would give him a heck of a lot of points. Lots of crosses as well. And also, when it's deep free kicks from the right, Walker's been taking some of them, which I think is interesting. Not really sure how many of those count as crosses because they end up being a lot more vertical, but just something to kind of keep an eye on. I mean, Eriksen had a crap load of crosses last week. I'm sure you liked all the points from that, but most of them were short corners, which, while technically counting as corners taken, are not what you're expecting because they are not going to lead to goals. So just kind of a heads up that that's a little bit of an inflated stat. For people that I don't like, it's the concept of a Tottenham stack. I know that Spurs technically still have the best defense over the last 5 matches and technically have the best attack over the last 5 matches, but that Sunderland matchup was very sobering because you think throwing Son, Ali, Eriksen, and Kane at anybody will result in goals. I mean, Tottenham hadn't just been beating teams. They'd been scoring in the 3s and 4s and 5s, so to see it held to 0 was pretty concerning. I think Kane, Ali, and Eriksen are all ownable in their own right, but Boro still have the 6th ranked defense. And by the way, they're significantly 6th. It's like the top 5 gap, them, gap, everyone else. So they're solidly 6th. But they're pretty decent. And while, like I said, while I do think any of them are ownable, I don't think all of them are ownable, if that makes any sense. Yeah. Middlesbrough always have some sneak in them. Not really fantasy relevant for me. But yeah, I think they could just be frustrating enough to kind of put the kibosh on a big Tottenham scoring day.
Okay. What do you think score-wise?
Oof. Oh, I'm going to say it's real frustrating. I'm going to see 1-0 Tottenham.
All right. That's a good shot. I think Tottenham get more than 1 in this game. But I do like and agree with you that this and the Liverpool midfield question is basically you're going to have to pick one player from that lot of 6. I think the Mane, Coutinho, Firmino, Kane, Eriksen, Ali group, I think you pretty much have to commit to one player and then stack off of him. I don't think you stack more than one of those players in a lineup this week. I prefer Eriksen only because I think that you get more bang for your buck with him.
You do.
He's not so goal driven that you have to rely on him scoring a goal. I think he can contribute enough.
Also, he's the 2nd most shots in the Premier League behind only Zlatan.
Absolutely. So that's another good stat that you can accompany your point total to hopefully cashing with. I'll say 2-0 Tottenham this week. But I like your shout for Kyle Walker. I think he's going to be very involved. I think I'd probably pick Eriksen out of that group of 6 I just mentioned with the Liverpool midfielders.
Fair enough. As you mentioned with the stacks, I noticed when I made my lineup, which, by the way, I noticed didn't save, so when we go back to the dual screen, I'm going to quickly fill that out while you talk about yours, was that I only had 2 players from one team in the whole thing. Like, it was like, usually you tend to want to, like, double up, which, by the way, I had a Morales-Coleman thing going on in both the Toggle League and in the official game, and it counted as an assist goal, and they stole it from him, which kind of ruined my day. But, yeah, I think this is just a week where you're going to end up diversifying a lot more because there isn't that match that you want to hang your hat on. And even the ones that you typically would, after a week like last week, I think a lot of people are going to be a little bit more hesitant to do that, which means that there could be some hidden upside just because people are going to end up being a little more conservative this week. But also, you want to make sure you don't get burned twice in a row. So finding a balance between there, I think, is really important. So we were super off on our scores last week. So where do you think it'll end up this week? And if I look super distracted, it's because I'm trying to cheat and fill out a lineup.
Yeah, I think it'll probably be with the 7 games. I would hope there'll be more than 13 goals like last week. I'll probably put it in probably the 140 to 150 range. That'll be a little conservative. I won't go crazy. There is no Chelsea, there is no Arsenal, there is no United, there is no City on this slate. So it does take a little bit of the firepower out. But I do think there'll be enough goals in this to get the point total up above where we saw it last week. So every week we make a team, and Kevin's currently doing his. If you see him looking down and looking all befuddled, so I'll run through my team real quick. I put Heaton in goal at 4,300 on defense. I have Seamus Coleman and Matthew Loughton. I usually always make one or two lineups that have a goalkeeper and a defender from the same team, only because I like to double up a little bit. And if you guys are, I know I preached Seamus Coleman's love this week. I think Leighton Baines is probably going to be a low ownership guy, because I think that everybody's going to see what Coleman's done over the last 3 weeks and fade away from owning Baines. But don't completely give him a blind eye. He's still a very significant piece in their offense, so don't forget to add him to a couple rosters if you do multiples. Through midfield, I have Mikel Antonio and Wilfred Zaha. Forwards, I have Benteke and Peter Crouch, and then my utility is my most expensive player, and I talked about him from Tottenham. It's Christian Eriksen at 9,900.
Yeah. All right. I think I got it. I think I got it. Now let's see if I can get it on the actual screen. Ish. This is the most professional thing that's ever happened. I promise. Oh, there we go. Okay, yeah. So I had Tom Heaton at the back, Kyle Walker and Scott Dan as my defenders, Robbie Brady, Sadio Mane, Christian Benteke, Romelu Lukaku, and Harry Kane. Hey, look, it's almost all the guys I mentioned. Yeah. as it tends to go out, that comes to a remaining salary of 0. I had Mamadou Sakho in there because I think that'd be a huge differential, but then I was left with like 1,000 extra left over, so I did bump up to Dan. I love that he always attacks the front post on those corners that they tend to play a little bit short. So I just think it really ups his potential. And it is going to be interesting. I hope you realize that last year's Dan versus Ward debate is going to be a Dan versus PVA debate for the rest of the season.
That's
over
good.
That whole center back versus wing back. Listen, Patrick Van Aanholt is not a good defender. I don't want anybody to get confused by that. But his constant bombing forward will yield fantasy results at some point. And with that, we are out of time. So, Rob, why don't you tell the folks where they can find you?
You can always find me on Twitter at Smokey_Loogie, or you can find my writings about soccer, fantasy, whatever, on Razzball.com.
Yeah, and I'm Kevin DeVries at KevRuff on Twitter. You can find our show, the FPL Roundtable, at EPL Roundtable. It's also in iTunes, so be sure to go check it out over there. I am now the lead fantasy writer over at Goal.com, so that comes out with 3 articles a week. The one I'm working on tonight as we record, and should be out by the time you're seeing this, is going to be on the team of the week, of a very strange week, to see which of those guys is worth owning in the Goal.com format. Also, this goes out over allinsportstalk.com. That's not true. Our other stuff goes out on allinsportstalk.com, which you can find their stuff in the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. As always, huge thanks to VIP-bet.com for putting us on this. And we hope that we've helped you this week. Sorry last week sucked. We're not personally accountable. But hopefully this week ends up being a lot better, and you can get in the money and have a great time. Thanks so much for watching us, and we'll catch you next week.
We're looking forward to hearing from you. Get in touch with us. VIP Bet, your place to win.